A cocky young bully drenched an 82-year-old widow with a cup of soda in a crowded diner. She trembled in shock while everyone else sat frozen in fear, afraid to stand up to him. The bully smirked, believing he ruled this small town, believing his cruelty had no consequences. But he made one fatal mistake he didn't know. A former Marine and his loyal German shepherd were about to step in and show him what true strength looks like. Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from, and if this story inspires your heart. Please subscribe for more stories of courage and miracles happening in everyday life. A warm Montana summer afternoon wrapped Greenleaf in golden sunlight, the sky wide and endless above fields of waving grass stretching toward distant pine-covered hills. Greenleaf Diner stood proudly at the corner of Maple and 3rd Street, its chrome edges catching the sunlight, red vinyl stools gleaming beneath the neon sign that flickered "Best Pie in Town." Inside, ceiling fans hummed lazily while the air smelled of fresh coffee, sizzling bacon, and memories, good and bad, served daily on white ceramic plates. At a small table near the window, Evelyn Harper, an 82-year-old widow, carefully lowered herself into her favorite booth. She was a petite woman with snowy white hair tied in a soft bun, skin like delicate parchment etched with a lifetime of smiles and storms. Her eyes, a gentle lake blue, sparkled with youthful curiosity, even though her hearing had grown stubborn with age, requiring a discreet silver hearing aid behind her right ear. Evelyn dressed with quiet dignity, today a cream-colored blouse and a teal cardigan, chosen more for how they made her feel than fashion. She was a woman who believed politeness was a shield strong enough for any cruelty the world might offer, though sometimes that shield trembled in her hands. Across the diner, a cluster of young men huddled near the jukebox, their laughter sharp and careless like stones skipping over still water. The loudest among them was Ricky Malone, a 22-year-old born and raised in Greenleaf. He had a messy mop of brown hair styled like he didn't care, because he truly didn't. His build was tall and wiry, a former high school soccer player who quit the team after his father, a stern rancher known for harsh words and harder fists, left home without goodbye. That abandonment hardened Ricky into someone who struck first at life before it could strike him. His mocking grin revealed insecurity wearing a mask of bravado. He wanted to be admired, feared, or at least noticed, anything but invisible. Two of his friends, Tyler, a freckled boy always laughing a beat too late, and Mike, a bulky kid with the moral courage of a doorknob, served as an eager audience for Ricky's showmanship. When the waitress, Sarah Whitmore, approached Evelyn's table to take an order, the trouble began. Sarah, a 19-year-old local with curly blonde hair tucked into a ponytail and soft hands calloused from double shifts, spoke kindly. "What would you like today, ma'am?" Evelyn leaned forward, brows knitting as she tried to catch every word. "I'm sorry, dear. Would you mind repeating that?" she asked, tapping her hearing aid gently. Sarah smiled warmly, ready to repeat, but Ricky was quicker and louder. "Hey, can you hear us now?" he bellowed, making his friends erupt with laughter. Then he whispered dramatically, barely moving his lips, "Or should we talk like this?" As if Evelyn's difficulty was a circus act for their amusement. The diner quieted, eyes darting between the boys and the elderly woman. Evelyn felt the familiar sting of embarrassment flush her cheeks. She tried to ignore the taunts, folding her hands to stop them from trembling. Her late husband had always said that silence in the face of cruelty was strength. But right now, silence felt like chains. Ricky swaggered closer, soda cup in hand. His smirk widened as he stood over her, soaking in every second of his small-town throne. With a flick of his wrist, quick, petty, cruel, he sent the icy soda splashing across Evelyn's cardigan. Brown liquid dripped down the soft knit, pooling against the floral pattern she'd chosen because it reminded her of her garden. Gasps swept through the diner like a cold draft. Someone muttered, "That's enough." But no one dared step forward. Evelyn stiffened, her heart pounding like a bird against a closed window. The humiliation wasn't just the soda. It was the reminder that some people believed age made you lesser, slower, unworthy of respect. She took a shaky breath, swallowing hurt and dignity alike. She tried to speak. "Young man, that was uncalled for." But her voice cracked under the weight of the moment. She looked down, suddenly painfully aware of every year she'd lived and every year she'd lost. The bell above the door chimed, a small sound, yet instantly the dynamic shifted. Jack Morris, a 35-year-old former U.S. Marine, paused at the entrance with a posture that radiated alertness. His sandy blonde hair was cut short, his jaw strong with a faint, rugged stubble. Years of service had carved discipline into his broad shoulders and calm focus into his storm-gray eyes. He wasn't intimidating by size, though he was muscular and tall, but by silence. There was gravity to him. And at his side sat Bruno, a 5-year-old German shepherd, powerful but well-trained, his black and tan coat glossy beneath a service harness. Bruno's intelligent amber eyes scanned the room. He sensed distress long before Jack did. Jack's gaze locked onto Evelyn. The spill, her trembling hands, the smug bully beside her. His jaw tightened. Without a word, he moved toward her booth, Bruno following like a loyal shadow. Evelyn looked up, startled but relieved at the sight of someone, anyone, choosing to stand near her instead of watching from afar. Ricky turned, eyeing the newcomer with a mix of annoyance and caution. But the room's attention had already shifted. The dynamic had changed, and for the first time since soda splashed down a grandmother's cardigan, hope flickered in the air, quiet but undeniable. The next move would decide everything. Jack Morris took one last step toward the booth where Evelyn Harper sat. The spilled soda had soaked into the delicate teal cardigan she wore, clinging to the fabric like an insult that refused to dry. Bruno, the 5-year-old German shepherd with alert amber eyes and a powerful stance, positioned himself slightly ahead of Jack, body angled protectively, paws planted firm on the black and white checkered floor. For a moment, the diner was silent. Fans turning, spoons paused, and even the jukebox seemed to hold its breath. Ricky Malone straightened his back, his arrogant half-smile returning as if to reclaim the stage. His wiry frame looked bigger when he puffed up his chest, though his eyes flickered with the insecurity that always lurked beneath. "Mind your business, hero," he scoffed, glancing around to make sure his friends Tyler and Mike were still watching. They were, but now their laughter had died, replaced by nervous glances at the imposing Marine with the emotionless stare. Jack's voice came low, steady, dangerous in how controlled it was. "You just humiliated an elderly woman. That makes it my business." Sarah Whitmore, the 19-year-old waitress with a kind heart taut and blonde ponytail, hovered nearby with a damp towel and a cup of warm water. Her hazel eyes darted anxiously between the two men. She had a strong instinct to fix problems, to clean messes literally and emotionally, but this was a mess far too large for a towel. Still, she stepped up to Evelyn and quietly dabbed the cardigan, her hand gentle and respectful. Evelyn Harper tried to speak, her voice trembling yet graceful. "Dear, it's all right. It's not. Jack cut in, glancing down at her with respect rather than pity. You didn't deserve this. Across the aisle, a new figure stirred. A broad-shouldered man in his late 40s with a weathered face and a sheriff's star pinned to his khaki shirt. Deputy Ron Baxter was known around Greenleaf for his calm patience and his dedication to community safety. He was a man who preferred resolving conflict with words rather than force, shaped by his years dealing with drunken cowboys and frustrated ranchers. Salt and pepper stubble marked his chin, and his deep-set blue eyes carried the exhaustion of someone who had seen too many small cruelties in a town that pretended to be peaceful. Ron stepped forward. Okay, that's enough, he said, his tone firm but not hostile. He rested a hand near his belt, not on his holster, but close enough for Ricky to notice. Ricky, you owe this lady an apology. Ricky barked a humorless laugh. What? Are you going to arrest me for spilling a drink? Ron's jaw shifted. For harassment and intimidation of an elder? If I have to. The word elder hit Ricky harder than the threat. He looked around, realizing the whole diner, dozens of eyes, were fixed on him. Tyler shrank back, pretending to focus on a ketchup stain. Mike scratched behind his ear as, though suddenly fascinated by the architecture of napkin dispensers. Their silence left Ricky exposed, without his usual chorus of approval. Jack angled closer, enough that Ricky had to tilt his head up to maintain eye contact. You have a choice to make, Jack said quietly. Walk away before you bury yourself deeper, or do something foolish you won't come back from. Ricky's pulse hammered visibly in his throat. The bully in him screamed to push back, because retreat felt like weakness. But for the first time, maybe ever, he sensed the difference between fear and respect, and realized he earned neither from anyone in this room. His gaze dropped to Bruno, who stared up with the cool focus of a trained protector, ears forward, tail still, muscles coiled like a spring waiting for command. Ricky's bravado leaked away like air from a punctured tire. He muttered, "Whatever," and turned, shoving past a table as he headed toward the door. It wasn't an apology, not even close, but it was retreat. The bell above the door chimed again, softer than before, like a sigh of relief. Ron stepped aside to let the boy leave, but not without a final look that promised consequences later. He then approached Evelyn. Ma'am, I'm real sorry you went through that. I'll take his statement later, make sure this doesn't happen again. He sounded sincere. That mattered to Evelyn. Jack sat down beside her, his voice gentle now. Are you sure you're okay? Evelyn nodded, though her eyes glistened, not from fear, but gratitude. Thank you, young man. You and your wonderful dog. She reached out with a shaky hand, brushing Bruno's head. The German shepherd leaned in, tail giving a single slow thump, as if acknowledging her bravery. Sarah brought a fresh cup of tea, setting it before Evelyn with both hands so it wouldn't spill. Evelyn smiled up at her. You're very kind, dear. I just wish I could have said something sooner, Sarah whispered, guilt shadowing her features. Evelyn placed her wrinkled hand over Sarah's youthful one. Standing with someone when the danger's past is still standing. I'm grateful. Jack's eyes scanned the room. He didn't trust peace that arrived too suddenly. He was used to ambushes, to disasters disguised as calm. But for now, the diner slowly returned to normal. Forks resumed clinking against plates. Someone dropped a quarter into the jukebox, and the world spun forward again. None of them knew yet that a phone in the back corner had recorded everything and that the true reckoning for Ricky Malone, and perhaps the entire town of Greenleaf, had only just begun. Greenleaf Diner settled back into its routine as though the ugly scene moments earlier hadn't cracked the peace of a summer afternoon. Yet beneath the calming clatter of utensils and soft jukebox melodies, a new tension pulsed, quiet but growing. Ricky Malone's departure didn't erase what he'd done. People had recorded the humiliation of an elderly woman, and the internet never forgot. In the corner booth, Owen Blake, a 27-year-old freelance web designer passing through town, reviewed the footage on his phone. Owen was slender and slightly awkward in posture, with sandy brown hair constantly falling into his sharp but anxious green eyes. He had always disliked confrontation. His childhood spent with a father who yelled too often taught him that silence was the safest armor. But something about Evelyn Harper's trembling hands stirred anger he didn't know he could feel. With a determined breath, he tapped the upload button and titled the video, "Young Bully Drenches Elderly Woman. Marine Steps In to Protect Her." His thumb hesitated for a second, but then, upload complete. The world would soon witness what Greenleaf had allowed to happen. Meanwhile, outside the diner, Ricky stomped down the street, every step fueled by embarrassment and a humiliation too fresh to swallow. His tall, skinny frame shook with each breath as heat flushed his neck bright red. He fished a cigarette from his pocket with trembling hands. Ricky hated how fast it spread, the shame, the feeling that he had lost control. A group of teenagers passing by glanced at him, recognizing the troublemaker from school. Ricky's jaw tightened. He shoved the cigarette back and marched toward his beat-up truck, paint chipped like old regret. The last thing he needed was more eyes judging him. Back inside, Evelyn Harper held her tea with both hands, drawing calm from the warmth. She was doing her best to hide the sting in her eyes, not wanting sympathy to overshadow dignity. To her left, Marla Simmons, a retired librarian in her 70s with a plump build and silver curls, slid into the booth. Marla's gentle hazel eyes were usually soft as worn books, but today they flashed with fire. "That boy needs a lesson," she grumbled, offering Evelyn a crocheted napkin from her purse, something she always carried just in case. Marla had always protected her friends like a watchful mother hen, fiercely loyal once her trust was earned. Across the diner, Deputy Ron Baxter radioed for patrol logs and made notes with a small pencil. He appeared calm, but inside he was uneasily aware that he hadn't stepped in fast enough. A good lawman should prevent harm, not arrive after it. His deep-set eyes tracked every movement inside, especially Jack Morris and his dog Bruno. Jack's presence brought both comfort and concern. Comfort because he stood for justice. Concern because a man with that much quiet power could change a town's balance. Jack himself remained seated, posture controlled, and still like a soldier waiting for orders. He was thinking, not about the confrontation, but about the fear he'd seen flicker in Evelyn's eyes. That kind of fear was familiar. In some places he'd served, cruelty preyed on the vulnerable daily. Seeing it here, in a peaceful Montana town, carved a new line into his conscience. Bruno, sitting obediently by his side, sensed Jack's mood and bumped his knee gently. The dog's loyalty was an anchor Jack clung to more than he'd admit. Sarah Whitmore returned from the kitchen with a slice of warm apple pie, on the house. Her face was softer now, guilt slowly fading into determination. "We won't let that happen again," she whispered to Evelyn. Sarah had survived a high school bully herself, an older cousin who mocked her weight until she starved for weeks. She had sworn, quietly, that she would never let anyone feel alone like she once did. Only a few tables away, Owen Blake's phone buzzed repeatedly. Notifications exploded across his screen. Likes, comments, reposts. News pages were already sharing the clip. The diner's green-tinted windows reflected him as he looked up, eyes wide with realization. In less than 10 minutes, thousands of strangers now knew what Ricky had done. With each refresh, the number doubled. Anger from the world beyond Greenleaf poured in like a tidal wave. Conversations hushed. Screens lit up around the room. People gasped as they saw themselves in the background, helpless, frozen. The truth hurt. They had watched, not acted. Evelyn gently touched Sarah's wrist, her voice soft but steady. "Dear, thank you. But the world can be very loud when it finally notices something." Her eyes lowered to the slice of pie, a sweet gesture trying to mend a bitter moment. Outside, like a spark dropped in dry grass, the whispers of what happened spread into shops, across farms, into living rooms. The internet would judge Ricky harshly, but so would Greenleaf, and small towns had long memories. Ricky didn't know it yet, but every step he took would soon feel like walking under a magnifying glass. Stairs would follow, doors would close, employers would avoid his name. His actions, reckless and cruel, had just reached a court he could not easily escape, the court of public opinion. And inside the diner, Jack Morris's eyes narrowed with a soldier's intuition. This wasn't over. When cruelty is dragged into the light, it rarely goes quietly. Morning arrived in Greenleaf like a slow confession, sunlight creeping through blinds, illuminating truths people tried to ignore. The diner incident had become the town's main conversation overnight. Screens glowed in kitchens, in tractors parked beside barns, and in the break room at the lumber yard. Everyone had seen Ricky Malone hurl soda on an elderly woman. Everyone had seen a Marine step in to defend her, and everyone had seen themselves watching, silent. Ricky barely slept. His bedroom, walls plastered with posters of dirt bikes and loud rock bands, felt like a courtroom of paper judges staring down on him. He splashed cold water on his face, staring into the mirror at his own reflection. Messy brown hair, jaw tight with resentment, pale skin dotted with freckles of stress. But beneath the tough exterior, fear throbbed. He'd been criticized before, teachers calling him a distraction, neighbors complaining about his noise. But this was different. The whole world was angry at him. A loud engine growled outside. Ricky looked through his window and spotted a sheriff's cruiser pulling up. Sheriff Walter Briggs, a man in his mid-50s with a thick mustache the color of steel wool and a build shaped by decades of ranch work before law enforcement, stepped out. Briggs was known as a firm but fair leader. He had survived a tragic loss long ago when his sister, a wheelchair user, was harassed in a city where nobody defended her. Since then, he had sworn to protect those who couldn't easily protect themselves. That wound shaped his values and his impatience with bullies. He knocked. Ricky's mom answered first. Karen Malone, a worn-down woman in her late 40s, thin from stress, her blonde hair tied back carelessly, looked exhausted. She had raised her son alone after her husband abandoned them. Years of double shifts at the grocery store had built quiet resilience in her, but she had never learned how to handle Ricky's anger. Now shame hung on her shoulders like a winter coat. "Morning, Mrs. Malone," Briggs said politely. "Is your son home?" Ricky stepped forward, trying to look unfazed, but his voice cracked when he asked, "What do you want?" Briggs didn't lecture. He simply said, You're coming with me." His tone wasn't cruel, just inevitable. At the courthouse, Deputy Ron Baxter joined Briggs for the disciplinary hearing. Ron had exchanged his usual relaxed posture for a stern professionalism. He remembered Evelyn Harper's trembling hands far too vividly. He wanted justice, tempered by hope for change. Judge Martha Collins presided, a woman in her 60s with silver-streaked dark hair pulled into a strict bun. Her sharp gray eyes missed nothing. She had lived in Greenleaf her whole life, had seen boys like Ricky rise or fall based on whether someone dared hold them accountable. She listened to testimony, the video, the witnesses, the harm done. Then she looked directly at Ricky, not with anger, but with disappointment that cut deeper. "Mr. Malone," she began, voice clear and cool, "you humiliated a woman 3 times your age. You showed cruelty, not strength. For your age, punishment must teach, not only hurt." Ricky swallowed, bracing for the hammer. "You will spend 6 weeks performing community service at Greenleaf Senior Home," she declared. "Daily shifts. You will listen, you will serve, and you will learn the value of those who built the world you stand in." Ricky blinked. That wasn't what he expected. He looked around, confused. Work with old people? But it was too late to argue. Briggs cuffed him, not as a threat, but a reminder. Consequences existed. Meanwhile, at the diner, Evelyn Harper arrived for her usual morning tea. Her cardigan was freshly washed, though a faint stain remained, like a bruise that refused to fade. Sarah Whitmore greeted her warmly, bringing fresh apple pie even though it wasn't on the house this time. Sarah believed comfort was a treatment, not charity. Across the room, Jack Morris sat silently with Bruno lying at his boots. Jack had traded battlefields abroad for quieter lands, yet the instinct to guard had never left him. When Evelyn approached to thank him again, he smiled, softly, rarely. "Anyone would have done the same," he said. But they both knew not anyone did. Jack's phone buzzed with military contacts checking in after seeing the viral video. They told him he'd done the right thing. Still, he felt uneasy. He had stopped one moment of cruelty, but how many more lurked in quiet corners? Evelyn sipped her tea, her steady hands revealing the calm she chose every day. Her voice, gentle yet resilient, carried a lesson. Young men lose their way sometimes. What matters is whether they find the road back. Jack glanced toward the door, imagining Ricky somewhere on that road, kicking stones, hating himself, or maybe beginning to grow. Bruno lifted his head, ears perked. His instincts told him something was changing in town, something necessary. By the time Ricky was escorted from the courthouse to the senior home, he wasn't angry, just terrified. He didn't know that inside those walls waited stories powerful enough to reshape him, stories Evelyn once lived and survived. But that was tomorrow's reckoning. Today, his punishment, his chance, had just begun. The Greenleaf Senior Home smelled faintly of lavender and lemon polish, the kind of scent that tried to soften the ache of years. Morning sunlight spilled through wide windows, warming the tiled hallway where Ricky Malone stood stiffly, orange community service vest layered over a faded band tee. His usually defiant shoulders drooped. His brown hair looked less rebellious today, flattened by worry and too little sleep. He had never felt more out of place. A clipboard was shoved into his hands by Nurse Ellen Watkins, a woman in her early 50s with a sturdy build and a face carved by deep laugh lines that hinted at humor surviving many long shifts. Her chestnut hair, streaked lightly with gray, was tied back in a no-nonsense bun. She had worked here for over 20 years and was known for two things: kindness and zero tolerance for disrespect. "Tasks are simple," she said briskly. "Serve breakfast. Help move wheelchairs. Keep that mouth polite." Beneath her firmness, there was a glimmer of hope. She had seen young troublemakers transform before. Ricky muttered, "Yes, ma'am," his voice small, stripped of swagger. She pointed toward a dining room full of chattering elders. "Start by helping Mr. Higgins with his tea." Arthur Higgins, late 70s, sat slouched in a wheelchair decorated with tarnished military pins. He was tall but thinned by life's erosion, his once broad shoulders drooping beneath a brown cardigan. His hair was white and cut short, his jaw rough with stubborn stubble. His piercing blue eyes, though tired, carried the fire of a former U.S. Air Force pilot. Losing his wife 4 winters ago left him nostalgic, sometimes angry, missing the days when his strength was unquestioned. As Ricky approached, Arthur grunted. "Didn't think they sent children to do a man's work." His voice was gravel rubbed against steel. Ricky blinked. "I'm not a kid." "Prove it," Arthur replied, sliding his cup toward him. Ricky poured, hands shaking slightly, but Arthur didn't watch the tea. He watched the young man's expression, testing him. "You think we're all slow and useless, don't you?" Ricky paused, swallowing uneasy truth. "I didn't think at all." Arthur gave something that almost resembled a smile. "Thinking's a good start." For the first time in a long while, Ricky felt seen, not as a problem, but as someone who could change. Hours passed. He carried trays, held doors, cleaned spills. He listened. He learned that Mrs. Parker had danced ballet in New York once, her knees now clicking like castanets. Mr. Lawson, whose age-spotted hands shook around his soup spoon, had built half the barns in Greenleaf. Every wrinkle in this place was a story carved by decades of bravery and heartbreak. Ricky's chest tightened each time he realized how little respect he'd shown the people who built the world he lived in. During a break, he was wiping his forehead when a soft voice drifted in from the Captain hallway. "You're Ricky, right?" He turned. Evelyn Harper stood there, leaning on her cane but holding herself tall. Her cardigan today was pale lavender, fresh, clean, unbothered by yesterday's cruelty. Her silver bun rested neatly at the nape of her neck, and her lake blue eyes shimmered with gentleness, not judgment. Ricky froze, neck burning hot. I didn't know you'd be here." "I volunteer," she replied, smiling kindly. "I like to read to the residents. They listen better than my old radio ever did." He tried to speak, but his voice tangled. Shame weighed him down more than any punishment the court could order. He took a breath. "I'm sorry." It was the simplest thing he'd ever said, and the hardest. Evelyn nodded softly, as if she'd been waiting for those words, not to feel superior, but to free him from the moment he wished he could erase. "Thank you, dear. But remember," she leaned closer, her voice gentle wisdom wrapped in silk. "The real apology is choosing kindness next time, even when nobody's watching." Those words settled deeply, like a seed finally finding soil. Then the senior home doors swung open. Jack Morris, the Marine whose calm strength had stopped Ricky's worst moment, entered with Bruno, the loyal German shepherd. Jack greeted nurses with a nod before scanning the room. His dark green shirt stretched across his muscular build, but his expression remained humble. He came not as a hero, but as a protector checking a quiet post. Bruno trotted toward Evelyn first, nuzzling her hand. She laughed, light and youthful. Ricky watched silently, surprised to feel admiration bloom in his chest instead of resentment. Jack noticed Ricky's vest and paused, his gray eyes, stern but fair, locked onto the young man. "How's it going?" Ricky wiped his palms on his vest. "It's hard, but good hard, I guess." Jack's nod was small but approving. "Good. Hard means you're growing." Bruno suddenly pushed his head into Ricky's hand, tail giving a cautious wag. Ricky hesitated, then scratched behind the dog's ear. "Thanks," he murmured, not sure if he meant the dog or the man. Later that evening, as the sun mellowed into gold outside the windows, Ricky rolled Arthur Higgins into the garden courtyard. The old pilot squinted at the sky, painted soft orange. "Carrying me out here doesn't make you strong," Arthur said. Ricky frowned. "No. Knowing we're all fragile, that's strength," Arthur replied. "You're learning." Ricky smiled, small but honest. He finally felt he was walking toward a better version of himself. That Sunday, back at Greenleaf Diner, Ricky nervously approached Evelyn with a fresh slice of apple pie. Warm, fragrant, carefully plated. "Every Sunday," he said quietly. "On me." No cameras, no audience, just a young man choosing differently. Evelyn's eyes softened, pride shining through. "Well, then," she said, "let's enjoy the start of your better days." Bruno settled under the table, tail thumping slow, steady approval. Jack leaned back, arms crossed, watching a town heal a little. The sun dipped beyond the mountains, turning the sky to rose and hope. Greenleaf, Montana, found its heart again. Kindness restored one small act at a time. In every town, in every diner, in every quiet corner of life, there are battles no one sees, moments when kindness becomes the greatest act of courage. Sometimes, the miracle God sends isn't thunder or lightning. It's simply the right person arriving at the right time. A Marine holding his ground, a loyal dog refusing to look away, a young man discovering that redemption begins the moment we choose compassion over pride, and an elderly woman, gentle, patient, showing that forgiveness can rebuild what anger destroys. Heroes don't always wear uniforms, angels don't always have wings, and miracles don't always come with fanfare. Most days God works quietly, through people willing to protect and love one another. So as you go back to your everyday life, remember, a single small act of kindness can be the miracle someone is praying for today. If this story touched your heart, please help us share its message. Comment below which moment inspired you the most. Hit the like button, subscribe to our channel for more uplifting stories, and join us in spreading hope. May God bless you and your family with peace, protection, and love. And may every act of kindness you offer come back to you multiplied. Amen.